Hello, everyone. So today we talk about prediction markets. As Davide mentioned, is a very new, nascent, and interesting topic in crypto, and not only. So I think I just want to go through a bit like a history, explaining for who doesn't know, like what are prediction markets, what's the status today, and then do some reflection of what's gonna come. So where we are today, Polymarket and Calci, which are the two major venues, both like US based, are have closed the April month with 23 billion of volume across all the markets. So definitely not rookie numbers. And if you can look at just 2 years ago, it was only 80 million combined. So we can appreciate that there is really an exponential growth on these new type of markets and contracts. So what we're going to talk about, a bit of history. When was the inflection point that made prediction market become viral and famous? What can you do in prediction markets? So what can you trade? A bit of critics about predictions, or what people are saying, what problems they currently have, and what next. And then just a brief section about what Dune does for prediction markets. So a brief history. So what are prediction markets? Is a market where you can trade contracts whose outcome depend on future events. So basically the price of a market is their forecast. Typically there are contracts that settle at $0 or $1. And if you buy today that the price is 60 cents, that means that the participants are discounting a 60% probability that the event in the matter will happen. So the price, it's real time. You can trade that every second, and the price moves instantaneously with any news, any leak, or any event that happens. And it's a very interesting concept, the fact that you have now this very thick by thick information drivers that are very different, for example, for polls or even, I don't know, Fed rates reports that are once a month. So it's very interesting how this information is going to be adopted in the real world. A bit of history. So Polymarket didn't invent the fire. So it's a concept that is not new, and it was actually almost 40 years old when an academic project, the Iowa Electronic Markets, first implemented these contracts as a trial with a $500 cap, and it bet the pulse in terms of being able to predict what is going to happen on an event. But then it just remained a project, didn't expand. Then in 2014, there was another platform, which was the first one regulated by the CFTC, which is the Commodity and Futures Agency in the US, where basically you can always, again, trade on news, but always with a cap. Then blockchain came in, so there was a new product called Augur. Maybe some of you remember it. It was on Ethereum. It's actually very solid infrastructure, but the UX was not really ready at the time for mass adoption, so it was a bit problematic, and it eventually just didn't work. And then Polymarket arrived in 2020, deployed on Polygon using UMA optimistic oracle, so what Augur implemented with a central limit order book. And again, it didn't pick up immediately, but just settled the foundation for now this meteoric rise. So when actually this product became famous, we have one event in particular, which is the 2024 US presidential elections, when Trump was running against Kamala Harris, and Polymarket really became one of the main information sources, or who's going to be the president. I was quoted by all the major US media companies, and you can see here exactly how it works. So you have an open, the market open on a certain date, and then you can see a time series of what are the prices, so the probabilities of a candidate over the other to win the election. And you can see Trump was favorite for a long time, then Kamala Harris raised, and then eventually, as we know, Trump won. This was a pivotal moment because not only it reached mass adoption, but also like demonstrated that can work at scale. There are more than 300,000 users betting on this market for a total of almost $4 billion in volume. Always in 2024, another participant, it's named Kalshi, obtained a regulation from the CFTC, again in the US, to basically become a commodity and future regulated market. It was founded as well like a couple of years prior to this, but then after the regulation, it suddenly like spiked, evolved and expanded to more markets. And eventually now the latest data in April 2026, we can see that it makes almost 60% of the total volume, also overtaking a poly market. So now what can you trade on this prediction market? So short answer would be everything, but we can dig a bit more into it. And we can see, like always using Dune data, like we can observe what categories of markets have mostly traded. Sports in the US particularly is the main market, but there is a decent volume also on crypto, of course, being poly market, crypto native, and politics, around like 10-15 billion on those markets. But you can see that 10-15 million total volume, and you can see sports is the major category. But this image, it doesn't reflect like the real truth of what like how the two markets differentiate each other. So Kalshi is mostly on sports and whereas most of the volume works, but poly market instead is more distributed. There is a lot of crypto and politics as well, and we're gonna dig a bit deeper on see what particularly this category look like. So sports, I mean, interesting betting on sports, but I think the interesting thing here is that by introducing sports, prediction market didn't become only a event-driven market. So once every 4 years you bet on the presidential campaign, and all the rest of the time you just don't use that. But sports happen every day, every week, and by implementing these markets, Kalshi was able to get a very consistent volume of bets like every day of the week. So you can see here the NFL is one of the most traded sports. And also I think something interesting for us here in Italy is that Polymarket just reached an agreement to become the official and exclusive prediction market for Serie A, which is interesting as well, as Polymarket cannot be used in Italy, but that's another thing. And of course, you can trade crypto. A trend that we found particularly interesting is that is very trendy now to bet on these very short-term markets. So like, will the price of Bitcoin, for example, be up or down in the next 5 minutes? That's one of the markets that has the most volume on Polymarket. And then there is another number of categories, of course, like politics, macro events, like a Fed rate decision, with the geopolitical condition, also many markets related to wars and consequences of such, but also like a weather, AI, culture, like Eurovision, Oscar, Grammys, stocks, earnings. So literally, there are markets for everything. One thing to point out is that these venues are, most of the markets are curated by the venue itself. So the venue decide what markets to open. On Polymarket, you can actually also create your own markets. But the reality of the fact is that typically markets created by users are very thin liquidity and not very traded. So 99.9% of the numbers I'm showing, it's all stuff that is curated by the venues themselves. So, of course, it's a new product, and it doesn't come with only like benefits and nice numbers and funny stuff to use, but also a few critics. So one of the most insisting one is insider trading. So now you have a public market where you can earn money on something, and if you have privileged information, you can trade on those. And on Polymarket, for example, you can potentially remain anonymous. So that's a very interesting conflict of interest. And just to mention a couple of cases, like a US soldier was arrested in the US because was trading the same week that the President Maduro was captured. Trade that week would have happened the arrest, and they made almost $400,000. Then they went back to recognize him, and he was arrested. But there are many other cases, and in particular lately, like with the Iran war, there were a couple of addresses always connecting to the same traders where made a lot of money on a very high percentage, like a win rate. So you can assume that people has privileged information. There are also other type of problems, so like a settlement dispute. So when a market concludes, like who says if the event actually happened or not. There were a couple of cases where a market resolved in a certain way, and there was not actually that clear that there was the actual resolution. And it was definitely controversial because you can see that the numbers here are not like a few euros, it's a lot of millions at stake. And last but not least, again, like a lot of this trading is said by certain studies to be wash trading. So you can always be careful to see like a report number. You always have to dig deeper a bit on like what happens. Yeah, so this is a bit like an overview, and I think now I want to just show a bit like what's happening like currently these days in the space, and what could happen. I think this year is going to be a very interesting year for this type of markets. So we can try to see what are the events or the catalyst of this industry. So for some of you might know what is Hyperliquid. So it's a perpetual trading venue on blockchain, very popular. They just launched prediction markets as well. So definitely another big offshore exchange that is going into the prediction market race. There are other markets, of course, that I haven't mentioned so far, but like a Limitless, Predict are all like on-chain native markets that have very high growth and very decent volume. But not only, like even traditional finance company are entering the space, like interactive brokers, possibly the most famous broker in the world, just launched a product called Forecast Trader, where they're going to focus mostly on like a macro and economical announcements, and is just been bootstrapped today, like in May 2026. And also Polymarket is expanding, partnering with NASDAQ and other traditional finance institutions to, for example, offer private stocks trading on their platform. What needs to change? What needs to be improved? What are the risks? A bit as we mentioned, like the integrity risk, like insider trading is not just a separate event. It's a thing that is now coming up very often in this when we talk about prediction markets. So that's definitely something that for the prediction market to establish as an information driver has to change and has to be addressed, possibly with KYC and anti-money laundering measures. But also, I think there have been studies, specifically in the US, that observe how prediction markets can be used to influence foreign policy and national policy. So imagine I want to trade like a presidential US campaign. Like you can have potentially foreign countries that spend money to change the optics of who can be the candidate rather than the other. And we know that how the human mind is. If you see something that is being said as having high probability of happening, then it's gonna happen. Like maybe people are not going to vote, or they change their mind in that process. And of course, like from an infrastructure point of view as well, like the dispute resolutions I mentioned, but in general, there's going to be a lot of work to do in how the mechanism of this prediction market work. So where Dune fits in, so I just can give you a brief introduction of what Dune is for who doesn't know. So we are a blockchain data platform. We have data for 100 and plus blockchains. We don't have, of course, only data for prediction markets. We have data for stablecoin, perpetuals, DEXs, lending protocols, like everything that you can analyze on blockchain is on Dune. We have a very established company, been active since 2018. So as the introduction say, probably the best known company in the space for data. Just working particularly on prediction markets, like there was a lot of difficulties to build these data sets because it's very different to put together data that is structurally very different. So Polymarket is purely blockchain data. Calci is not settled on blockchain, so it's fully just off-chain. They have very different categorization, very differently structured the market. With Dune, we built a data set that normalizes and put together all these differences and make it very easy for you to compare venues, compare like markets and where the trades happen. So we do a lot of the work, so you don't have to. But just a bit of structure of how this data looks like. So we get data from sources that can be blockchain or APIs. We build particularly 3 interesting data sets for each venue, which are markets, having reference data and details about all the markets that are traded. Trades table, so you have specifically all the trades that happen in that market as a time series, so you can go back since the inception of the market and see everything. You can backtest strategies, you can see how this data could be able to predict actually future events. And then we have candlestick prices. So as well, you can see everything like open, high, low, close, volume for that. And then we put together, basically we union these data sets and we build the final prediction market data set that is very easy to consume if you want to do reports, if you want to write news about it, if you want to build a prediction market data set and observe the a prediction market venue and observe the competition is what you need. Yeah, so this is a bit, as I mentioned, the data set we've built, and thank you everyone. I don't know what time is it, so if anyone has questions. Yes, please.
One second.
How far away you think we are from AI accessing data and autonomously building strategies and operate in full autonomy? I know it's just a dystopian future, but maybe it's not too far away.
It's not too far, I think.
He builds his own algorithm and checks your data on your platform or other blockchain data platforms and takes decisions and operate by itself. What do you think is the scenario? What is likely to happen maybe now or in a few years?
Yeah, good question. I think that definitely is already solved the fact of accessing data. So Dune as a MCPs, CLIs, any like agent can freely access or easily access data on Dune. They also now solved a bit like the part of if these agents want to actually connect to platform, have accounts, spend money. Now there are a lot of protocols like X402 by Coinbase, or where these agents can have their own wallets, they can have their own money rails. In terms of strategies, I mean, they can potentially do it already. I think that it's early to say if these strategies are valuable. Like generally, when there is not much history on, maybe agents might have already started trading a few months ago, but then doesn't mean that they can consistently provide alpha on these markets and be traded. But I think that there are already all the tools to do it. It's just a matter of directing them maybe a bit in the direction and see what a longer history can tell us.
Another question?
Good. Thank you, everyone.